Next up, we have our final adventurer who gets the honourable position of going last because she was the last to send in her slides, despite not having a proper job or any decent excuse. Anyway, Lindsey, she's a good person to be rounding us up tonight. She's a good adventurous spirit. And she says simply that she likes to do stuff. From running across the country to see a friend for a cuppa, pedalling a bicycle across continents to watch sporting events, or just wandering along fence lines, retracing a pretty special someone's journey. Whatever idea pops into her head, Lindsey likes to see if she can give it a go. So please give a warm welcome to Lindsey.
Hi. Okay. So I am lost. I'm actually fucking lost. In the Australian bush, the sun's set, it's getting dark, and I'm scared. And you'd think I'm a massive vagina, because I've done this many times before, camping in the bush. But I'm expecting to meet someone. I was being picked up by a homestead on this night, and I was scared that they wouldn't find me. But in my state of panic, I forgot that I had a torch on my head, which Jimmy obviously saw and swung by, found me, threw my trolley called Trevor back into his ute, and he said, before we went anywhere, "What's a pommy chick like you doing in the arse fuck of nowhere out here, mate?" So I said, "Well, Jimmy, 10 years ago, I broke my leg when I was backpacking in Australia, and all I had was a pile of films and books to devour, one of which was Follow the Rabbit-Proof Fence. It was a story about 3 young Aboriginal girls who were forcibly removed from their home and placed in a settlement 1,000 miles away. Molly, the eldest, who was only 13, wasn't having any of it. They weren't allowed to speak the native language. They weren't given sheets unless VIPs visited. So she said, no. And they escaped, and they walked all the way home, following the rabbit-proof fence. The rabbit-proof fence was erected to keep rabbits out of pastoral land. And this is the red line here. It didn't work because it took 7 years to build, and the rabbits obviously went back and forth. So they built another one, which didn't work again, so they built another one. And then Molly and the girls followed from Moore River all the way home. 3 months later, after being acquainted with the story, my dad passed away suddenly, and I was on the first plane home, and I fell into a hole of depression, and I was obviously lost. So I signed up to cycle to Paris to get myself out of, channel this negative energy. I hadn't cycled a bike for about 10 years, and every time I was faced with a hill, I threw my bike down, and I had a massive tantrum, and then I thought about what the girls went through and used them as inspiration. And I did all these other things. I cycled the length of Africa, and blah, 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 blah. And then I said I always wanted to go back to pay homage to these girls. And my mum was like, "No, Lindsey, look at all the incidents and accidents you've had before." I said, "I know, Mum, but I've been thinking about this for 8 years, and I really want to do it. And if I don't give it a chance, then I'll always be wondering." So I did Bob Cooper's Outback Survival course, other things, and I thought, look, if it gets too difficult, then I'll pull out. And this is me at the start line, which is one of the best days of my life, because it's also one of the hardest things to get to on an adventure, getting to the start line. And this is where Molly, Daisy and Grace would have lined up and properly legged it, all the way to Jegalong when no one was looking. Now, I thought it didn't rain much in Australia. It bloody does. On my first day, it bucketed down, and my boots, which were meant for the desert and dry weather, got absolutely saturated, and I had to make these makeshift shoes out of flip-flops. And it took me 2 weeks, 200 miles to make the fence, which we're on now. And I carried this book with me all the way, and I'd refer to where I was to where they'd be. And Molly got really excited when she saw this because it was her beacon home. But for me, it was a beacon of an adventure that I've dreamt of for 8 years. Right, so there aren't many people who live along the fence, but those that do have one thing in common. They love to drink, as do I, before a talk, so do not leave me to go on to the end. And this guy has nothing in his fridge other than beer. I'd walked 24 miles before I got to him, and he would not let me drink water. But although he likes to drink, he also knows his stuff. And on his land was this cave with these Aboriginal artefacts. And people said to me before, what are you doing going out there? There's so many other tracks. There's so many other better walking trails. But there are no tourists seeing those Aboriginal things. And, and look at the stars. People said to me, oh, did you go to bed at 7 o'clock? And I was like, no, I actually didn't. I'd go to bed at 11 o'clock at night. Every night I was so mesmerised by the stars. It was just incredible. So the fence didn't do its job with the rabbits, but Jesus golly, it did its job with other wildlife. So these little camel calves were split up from their family. The family were on that side, these guys were on this side. And I spent 2 hours trying to herd them through a gate that I just passed moments before. And, being on your own, your head gets a bit loopy. I dreamt about being Prime Minister. I dreamt about being in the Olympics in a walking race, which is pretty boring. And then I got married, had babies, and then I ended up getting divorced because I had a text from a friend who I was marrying, he didn't know, saying that he'd just met the girl of his dreams and was going on holiday with her. Fucking arsehole. And this was the best day of my life. So I had no idea how it was going to end. I was met by Molly's daughter, Maria, and her family, and we walked into Jigalong together. It was just incredible. And then followed off, the cherry on the cake, meeting Daisy herself, who in 1931, along with her 2 sisters, escaped from the settlement they were placed in and walked all the way home. So it was so incredible. It took me 10 weeks. I couldn't fly back to Perth in just 1 hour, so I decided to hitch. Andy, number 1, was pretty pervy. Ex-pizza delivery boy, also pretty creepy. Lift number 3, 4, and 5 were just unbelievably amazing. Gentlemen, funny stories. This guy, every time he passed a kangaroo, stopped to see if there was a roo in his pouch to take him home to rear. So obviously I didn't want to go home. Brexit had happened. Trump was about to be president. And I felt invincible because I didn't realise I could walk the fence. So I decided to circumnavigate Australia using vehicles just as truck drivers. And it was bizarre. It was totally bizarre. And I didn't know this was coming. But that's a whole nother story. So, thanks.